Luis Alfredo Garavito Cubillos, a name that sends chills down the spine. Known as La Bestia or the Beast, Garavito was one of the most prolific serial killers in history. His story is one of horror and depravity, a journey into the darkest corners of the human soul. This essay will unravel his chilling tale, exploring his early life, his heinous crimes, and the eventual capture that brought his reign of terror to an end. Prepare yourself for a gripping narrative that delves into the mind of a monster. As you read, consider what drives a person to such extremes and how society can prevent such tragedies. Garavito's story is not just about his crimes, but also about the efforts to stop him. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the relentless pursuit of justice. As we explore his life, we'll also examine the broader implications of his actions and what they mean for our understanding of evil. Luis Alfredo Garavito was born on January 25, 1957, in Genova, Colombia. His childhood was marred by abuse and neglect, setting the stage for the monster he would become. Garavito's father was an alcoholic who frequently beat him, and his mother was emotionally distant. Such a toxic environment often breeds troubled individuals, and Garavito was no exception. As a young boy, Garavito displayed signs of psychological disturbance. He was known to torture animals and had a penchant for violence. These early indicators were ignored, and Garavito's behavior escalated unchecked. His education was sporadic at best, and he eventually dropped out of school. With no support system or guidance, he drifted into a life of crime and depravity. In his teenage years, Garavito began to exhibit increasingly disturbing behavior. He was known to have inappropriate relationships and displayed a fascination with death. His family, unable or unwilling to help, left him to his own devices. This lack of intervention allowed his dark tendencies to flourish unchecked. By his early 20s, Garavito had already begun his descent into darkness. He moved frequently, never staying in one place long enough to establish roots. This transient lifestyle made it difficult for authorities to track his movements, allowing him to evade capture for years. His early life was a tragic prelude to the horrors he would later commit. Garavito's criminal career began with petty thefts and assaults, but it quickly escalated. In the mid-1980s, he started targeting young boys, luring them with promises of money or gifts. His modus operandi was chillingly systematic. He would gain their trust, lead them to isolated areas, and then unleash unspeakable violence upon them. His victims were often street children, vulnerable and easily manipulated. Garavito's appearance was deceptive. He looked like an ordinary man, which made it easier for him to approach his targets without raising suspicion. He would often disguise himself as a priest, a street vendor, or a charity worker to gain their trust. The brutality of his crimes was staggering. Garavito would torture his victims for hours before finally killing them. This sadistic pleasure he derived from their suffering was a clear indication of his deep-seated psychopathy. Each crime was meticulously planned, leaving little evidence behind. His ability to evade capture for so long was a testament to his cunning and ruthlessness. As his killing spree continued, the number of missing children in Colombia began to rise alarmingly. Authorities were slow to connect the dots, partly due to the transient nature of his victims. It wasn't until the late 1990s that a pattern began to emerge, and the hunt for the beast truly began. Garavito's descent into darkness was complete, and the world was about to witness the full extent of his evil. The early 1990s marked the beginning of Garavito's most prolific period. His first confirmed victim was a young boy named Juan Carlos, who disappeared in 1992. The boy's mutilated body was found days later, and the brutality of the crime shocked the local community. Unfortunately, this was just the beginning of a horrific pattern that would claim the lives of over 300 children. Garavito's method was consistent. He targeted boys aged between 6 and 16, often from impoverished backgrounds. These children were easy prey, and their disappearances often went unnoticed. Garavito would lure them away with promises of food, money, or jobs, taking advantage of their desperate situations. Once he had them in his grasp, he would take them to remote locations where he could commit his atrocities undisturbed. The discovery of the bodies was always a gruesome affair. The victims showed signs of prolonged torture, sexual abuse, and eventually murder. This pattern of violence was so extreme that it left experienced detectives horrified. Each new discovery added to the growing fear and outrage in the communities affected by his crimes. Despite the mounting evidence, Garavito remained elusive. His cunning use of disguises and multiple identities made it difficult for authorities to pinpoint his location. Moreover, the fragmented nature of the investigations, spread across various regions, hindered a coordinated effort to capture him. The authorities were chasing shadows, and Garavito continued his reign of terror unabated. Section 5. The investigation begins. By the mid-1990s, the Colombian authorities were under immense pressure to solve the growing number of child disappearances and murders. The public outcry was deafening, and the media began to highlight the gruesome details of the crimes. This increased scrutiny finally led to a more coordinated and determined investigative effort. Task forces were established, and forensic experts were brought in to analyze the evidence. They began to notice patterns in the crimes, the age and profiles of the victims, the methods of abduction, and the nature of the injuries. This led to the realization that they were dealing with a serial killer, one who was far more dangerous than anyone had previously imagined. The turning point in the investigation came with the discovery of a hidden stash of Garavito's belongings. In a makeshift camp, authorities found notebooks filled with names, dates, and meticulously kept records of his victims. This chilling discovery provided concrete evidence linking Garavito to the crimes and offered a glimpse into the mind of a methodical and remorseless killer. Despite these breakthroughs, Garavito continued to evade capture. His nomadic lifestyle and the use of various aliases made it difficult for the police to track him down. However, the net was closing in. The increased pressure from both the public and the authorities meant that Garavito's days of freedom were numbered. The stage was set for his eventual capture, but it would not come without a final dramatic twist. Section 6. The capture. In April 1999, a stroke of luck finally led to Garavito's capture. He was arrested in the town of Villavicencio on unrelated charges of attempted rape. Unbeknownst to the authorities at the time, they had just apprehended one of the most wanted men in Colombia. It wasn't long before the pieces began to fall into place, and his true identity was revealed. Upon his arrest, Garavito initially denied any involvement in the murders. However, the evidence against him was overwhelming. DNA samples from the crime scenes matched his, and the notebooks found in his possession provided irrefutable proof of his guilt. Faced with the mountain of evidence, Garavito eventually confessed to his crimes in chilling detail. His confession was a macabre catalogue of horror. Garavito admitted to the murder of over 140 children, but hinted that the actual number could be higher. He provided details of his methods, his motives, and his feelings during the killings. This insight into his psyche was both fascinating and terrifying, revealing the depth of his depravity. The capture of Garavito was a significant victory for the Colombian authorities, but it also left many unanswered questions. How had he managed to evade capture for so long? How many more victims were there? And most importantly, what could be done to prevent such atrocities in the future? The answers to these questions would shape the lessons learned from this dark chapter in history. Section 7. The Trial and Confessions. The trial of Luis Alfredo Garavito was one of the most sensational in Colombian history. Held in 2000, it attracted massive media attention both nationally and internationally. Garavito, now infamous as the Beast, faced a barrage of charges related to the murders, rapes, and tortures of countless children. The courtroom was filled with the families of the victims, journalists, and law enforcement officials eager to see justice served. Garavito's demeanor during the trial was chilling. He remained calm and composed, showing little remorse for his actions. His detailed confessions, which were read out in court, horrified those present. He described his crimes with unnerving detachment, providing a glimpse into the mind of a true psychopath. His lack of empathy and complete disregard for human life were starkly evident. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Forensic experts presented DNA matches, and the notebooks found in his possession provided a gruesome record of his crimes. The trial also featured testimonies from survivors who had narrowly escaped his clutches. Their harrowing accounts added a personal dimension to the proceedings, underscoring the sheer brutality of Garavito's actions. In the end, Garavito was found guilty on multiple counts of murder, rape, and torture. He was sentenced to 1,853 years in prison, the maximum sentence allowable under Colombian law. However, due to legal stipulations, his actual time in prison would be significantly less. This sparked outrage among the victims' families and the public, leading to calls for legal reforms to ensure that such a monster could never be released. Section 8. Lessons from Darkness. The case of Luis Alfredo Garavito offers several grim but crucial lessons. Firstly, it highlights the importance of early intervention in preventing future crimes. Garavito's troubled childhood was marked by signs of psychological disturbance that were ignored. Early intervention, counseling, and support might have steered him away from his dark path, potentially saving countless lives. Secondly, the case underscores the need for better systems to protect vulnerable populations. Garavito preyed on street children who were already marginalized and overlooked by society. Strengthening social services, improving child protection laws, and ensuring that all children have access to education and support systems are vital steps in preventing such tragedies. Thirdly, the investigation into Garavito's crimes demonstrates the importance of coordinated efforts in law enforcement. The fragmented nature of the initial investigations allowed Garavito to evade capture for years. A more coordinated and collaborative approach among different jurisdictions could have led to his earlier apprehension and saved many lives. Finally, the trial and sentencing of Garavito raised important questions about justice and the adequacy of existing legal frameworks. The outrage over his potential early release prompted discussions about legal reforms and the need for harsher penalties for heinous crimes. This case serves as a reminder that justice systems must evolve to meet the demands of modern society and ensure that such monsters are kept away from potential victims. Section 9. The Legacy. Luis Alfredo Garavito's legacy is one of horror and caution. His crimes left an indelible mark on Colombian society, prompting significant changes in how such cases are handled. The sheer scale of his atrocities forced the country to confront uncomfortable truths about its social and legal systems. In the years following his capture, Colombia made strides in improving child protection laws and social services. Garavito's case also led to advancements in forensic science and criminal profiling in Colombia. Law enforcement agencies now have better tools and training to identify and apprehend serial offenders. The lessons learned from this case have been applied to other investigations, helping to prevent similar tragedies. Despite these improvements, the scars left by Garavito's crimes remain. The families of his victims continue to grapple with their loss, and the memories of the atrocities committed still haunt the communities affected. Memorials and remembrance events are held to honor the victims and ensure that their lives are not forgotten. Garavito's name will forever be associated with one of the darkest chapters in criminal history. His story serves as a grim reminder of the depths of human depravity and the importance of vigilance in protecting the most vulnerable members of society. It is a legacy that underscores the need for continued efforts to create a safer and more just world. Section 10. Conclusion. Luis Alfredo Garavito's story is a chilling journey into the depths of human evil. From his troubled childhood to his horrific crimes and finally his capture and trial, every aspect of his life reveals the monstrous capabilities lurking within humanity. His legacy is a testament to the importance of vigilance, early intervention, and coordinated efforts in law enforcement. The impact of his actions will be felt for generations. His crimes forced a nation to confront its failings and work towards a better future. The changes prompted by his case have undoubtedly saved lives, but the memory of his victims serves as a constant reminder of the need for continued vigilance. Let us remember the innocent lives lost to Garavito's brutality and honor their memory by working towards a safer society. Support child protection initiatives, advocate for better social services, and ensure that our justice systems are equipped to handle such heinous crimes. Together we can prevent such tragedies from occurring again. In the end, the story of Luis Alfredo Garavito is not just about a monster, but about the resilience of the human spirit and the relentless pursuit of justice. It is a story that demands we remain vigilant and committed to safeguarding the most vulnerable among us.